I connect most often, I've always been drawn to most to worship through, but I'm finding disciplines in my life where I just will find simple things to give glory to God through, just in my own thoughts and prayers and publicly as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what I was quoted as saying also. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, for me, music is funny in that, like, I've always been personally moved by it, I've always enjoyed it and all that, but it to me becomes more of a way of connecting with people and sharing with people than anything else. And so that, I think, is great, because I'm not always that good at it in person. So being able to, write a song or sing with people, kind of gets past certain barriers that some people aren't good at getting past, And so that's beautiful in and of itself. But one of my favorite quotes is this old Celtic proverb, which is that milking the cow is holy. That we have in it the reality of human life is that it is full of struggle, as Aaron said. It is full of challenges and hard times, and worship is how we treat those things as much as it is how we treat singing. One of the funniest things, I think, is that we so often separate how much we love God from how much we're capable of loving others and how we respect and treat others. And yet, it's in God's eyes, it's completely inseparable. I cannot claim to love and worship Jesus if I don't love and respect my neighbor. It's not possible. There is no spiritual worldly in terms of how I treat and respect people. And so, like Jesus even said that, he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. And he said, and the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Now, little turn of phrase, the second is like it, is really fascinating because it makes the two things connected. If I love my neighbor, I love Jesus. And so for me as a worship leader, that creates an interesting challenge because sometimes worship leading culture requires us to, get in my own little island on the stage and pretend that nobody's there, when in reality what Jesus wants me to do is try my best to love people. And so I don't know what that looks like. In my job, that sometimes means just trying to connect with people and love people, in a room and make as much of the stage disappear as we possibly can. And I think for the Christian dentist, that means respecting and honoring in his business practices and his personal relationships and his, and how he does that with people. And so the favorite word is a word I just don't like in that question, because I think it allows us to say this is what fits me like a glove, when in reality worship as a concept is something that we all do with all of us, whether we like it or not. Josh.
Yeah, I'm like these guys too, where music is a huge expression of worship, but I see examples of people, my brother for one, who works at a group home with people who are physically and mentally challenged, and yes, it's his job on one hand, but it doesn't stop there. He goes back and volunteers time and does stuff at the church with the same type of thing, and my girlfriend too does this kind of stuff, and I look at that, and I'm like, wow, that's love, that's worship, and when I'm home and I'm hanging out with my brother, he's like, wants to know what's going on the road, and music and stuff, and it's like,
it's so much easier.
yeah, it's really cool, but what's up with your life? I want to hear what's going on with you, and because there's some amazing stories, and I just, when you get up, and I know everyone has that capability, and we all share in that, and I know we all, to some level, participate in that as well. And then when we come together and we sing, that's worship.
I appreciate that, guys. That was kind of an easy question to glaze over, but we had 5 unique, heartfelt answers, so we really, really appreciate that. We've got about 5 more minutes, and I usually like to end on a fun question. What's on your DVR and that kind of stuff, but we've got a really spiritual vibe going on today, so I had a couple questions that kind of tie into one thing, and we'll go back to our first Aaron on the end, and we'll work our way back down. We got about a minute. We got about a minute each for the answers.
He was born first. That's what you mean, right?
I guess as we, at least he's born close to today. What what would you say is the hardest challenge you have with being a musician and being on the road?
Well, this year, really, God opened the door for us as a band to do this full time. And almost a constant struggle, or question, maybe not so much a struggle, it's just why? Like, God, why did you choose us to do this? And I think we're always trying to figure out and make sure that we're really, our heads are in the right place to do this. And secondly, missing family back home. It was really tough. So we always try to work out what's the best way to do that so we're not sacrificing our families to follow what God has us to do.
I think there's a checklist in my own life after I made the switch. I had this checklist. The checklist goes Jesus, my family, and then everything else. And when you're in ministry a lot, you equate what you're doing out here as Jesus. It becomes your God. Oh, well, because I'm in ministry, no. It doesn't, that's not the case. If you're losing in your family, and you're losing in your personal relationship with Christ, you lost here. You lose. Everything you're doing up here and all your spirituality and I don't care what's going on, it's a facade. It's a fake. You know what I mean? If your marriage is broken and you're out here touring, you're an idiot, number one. And number two, everything you say from stage, I believe, is negated into a lie. So for me, the biggest challenge is I lived a certain way for so long in doing this that I had to learn how to really do it the right way. So for me, it's always that. In the last few years, it's been, how do I make Jesus first, my wife second, and this third, even though this is my job. It's my calling, it's my ministry, and it's my passion. It still needs to be last in line.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say the same thing, priorities, and trying to figure out how to make that work and not get confused over what it is that we're doing, not play games with ourselves, not playing a game with myself in my own head to justify my own actions or my own lack of action. But I would say the tension also between that and also being able to do what we do as broken people. Finding a way to say, like, today I don't feel like it. Today I know I'm not in the right space, and trying to find a way to operate in grace. It's just a weird thing. If I'm honest, it's just a strange thing. The stage is a weird thing, and I don't know really how to deal with it, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, I think the hardest thing, both Aaron said it, is family stuff and figuring out how to make that first. As a way of honoring God with every different priority that you have, and not getting confused over the fact that this is not necessarily serving Jesus only. So.
Yeah, for me, I totally agree. I think this has been exactly kind of what I would say. And to add to it, I mean, I've got 3 little kids and another one on the way. My wife is, amazing at keeping the home feeling like home as much as she can, even though I'm not there some of the time. But that's the hardest thing for me, is just like being away when I got little ones, And in addition to that, and I experienced the same thing when I was in pastoral ministry, and that is like, I think there's a certain complication, or a certain sense at which getting paid for ministry can feel complicated, It can feel like, even though your motives might be pure, it gets mixed and funny. And I experienced that when I was on salary at a church just as much as I do now, so it's not any different. But it certainly has its unique challenges at some point where you're wrestling, especially when you mix family in with that, right? Like you're like, I have a point to which I have to provide for my family, and maybe this is the right choice for business or, provision purposes. But God, what do I do with this? Is this the right choice for ministry, or is this the right choice for... And so you get people who in church ministry make career moves, which sounds funny, doesn't it? And we do it in music too. And so it's like, it's that to me I find muddy and interesting. And sometimes I'm a little